Good morning. First, please allow me to express my gratitude for the co-learning that we're all sharing in today. Some of you might remember the old Jim Reeves song, "Welcome to My World." Well, what is your world? Not your physical or material world, but your intellectual or spiritual or cultural world, your worldview. Now you might ask, what is a worldview? Do I have one? How did I get it? Is it contagious? The answer to the last question is yes, it is. And no, it's not. It's contagious because you get your worldview from others. But it's not because each of us have agency to choose what our worldview is. Okay, let's back up. What is a worldview? A worldview is the common concept of reality that all of us share as a cultural group. Worldviews are pervasive in every society. Worldviews are the beliefs and assumptions by which we as individuals make sense of reality within the language and traditions of our culture. Our worldviews provide us the answers to life's big questions. They're what we base our predictions on. But they're more than just a matter of the mind alone. They're a matter of the heart. Our worldviews are our hopes and dreams for the future. Now that you know what a worldview is, you could ask, do I have one? And the answer to that is yes, you do. Is there anyone here this morning that doesn't believe you're on planet Earth? Or that the Earth is flat and not round? Or that the sun revolves around the Earth? No matter how you answer that question, it's indicative of the fact that you have a worldview. So how did you get yours? At the simplest level, through your life experiences. Those experiences with your parents and family, in school or in church, by reading books or watching movies or TV, or with your social interactions with friends and colleagues and others. It's this latter source that lets us know that worldviews are both an individual choice and a group phenomenon. These local structures or contexts of behavioral norms play a big role in the construction of our worldviews. Beginning as children and throughout our lives, we learn which behaviors are acceptable and which are not, especially if we want to be accepted into our local social system. In other words, our social interactions let us know when it's okay to be different and when we're required to be similar the same. These shared cultural worldviews also draw the line between insiders and outsiders. Thus, the rigidity or flexibility of our local culture is part of our worldview. And because worldviews are constructed locally, they can vary from society to society. If you've traveled to other countries, you've experienced different local constructs for normal social behavior. These local constructs influence how each of us sees the world. They become each person's cultural worldview. So far, so good. When we get into trouble with this matter of worldview is in two areas: when we make assumptions about others without being aware of why, and when we try to force our worldviews on others. First, this issue of assumptions. Our worldviews operate primarily in the background, in our subconscious, and we're pretty much unaware of them. We go about our daily lives seeing the world through this lens of worldviews, behaving in culturally acceptable ways, making assumptions and drawing conclusions about the things that we see. We don't even think about it. We don't even ask why we make these decisions. We rarely question where the assumptions came from or how we drew the conclusions we did, or where did the knowledge come to make the decisions that we did. Let me just tell you a brief story of mine about a quick assumption I made. 2 years ago, I was doing some work in a rural Minnesota community in the winter. I was driving to a meeting there on a very cold below zero day. I turned a corner and looked up the street and saw a person on their hands and knees in the middle of the street. I looked a little more closely and I saw an older male, poorly dressed and certainly not dressed to be outside, unshaven and very shaky. He would try to get up, and because he was unstable, he'd fall back down. Now, you might imagine the quick assumption I made about his condition. So I drove up to him and asked, "Can I help you?" And he looked at me and he said, "I can't get up." And right away I knew that the assumptions I'd made were wrong. I asked him if I could take him somewhere. He said he was on his way to the bank and could I help? So I got out and helped him in my car, and we started to drive to the bank. And I came to learn that it turned out that he had 3 broken ribs. And he wasn't supposed to be outside, but he decided to go to the bank anyway, and he'd fallen down and couldn't get up. This experience was a good lesson for me in reminding me to take care about making quick assumptions about people and to ask myself when I do make assumptions, why did I make the ones I did? The second area we get into trouble is when 2 or more different worldviews meet and both make uninformed and unaware assumptions about the other without ever questioning why. As the title of this presentation suggests, they could collide. And if they do collide, the results are generally have negative consequences for one or both of those colliding worldviews. In fact, when worldviews are not in our awareness or acknowledged, stronger persons in a conflict often try to impose their worldviews on others, generally to destructive effect. Take, for instance, the case of the European worldview coming to North America and the efforts to force that worldview on the civilizations that were here. The results have been devastating to many of those nations, and the now dominant culture has also paid a price for its actions. And we're seeing this similar scenario being played out around the world to no less devastating effect today. In his book, The Clash of Civilization and the Remaking of the World Order, Samuel Huntington suggests that in our geopolitical world, the most important sources of conflict among human beings will no longer be ideological, political, or economic. They will be cultural. In fact, he says, peoples and nations are attempting to answer the most basic question humans can face. Who are we? And they are answering that question in the ways that mean the most to them. And what means the most to most people are their ancestry, their language, their history, their values, customs, institutions, and especially religion. At the heart, then, of our current cultural wars, whether local, national, or international, is a clash of worldviews. Now, let's bring that story right down here to Minnesota, where all the men are strong and all the women are good looking. Yep, that's a worldview. And I would ask, how many of us walk around in our smug Minnesota way without even thinking about why we think we Minnesotans are so special? Or maybe you're from California or New York or Texas, and you have your own sense of specialness lurking in your subconscious, guiding how you view others. What consequences do these local cultural worldviews have for our ability to work together? Surely they can create barriers for understanding and finding common ground. What to do about it? How can we avoid collisions of worldviews and instead come together in ways that build understanding and respect and allow each of us to hold on to what's most important? First, we should not only be able to detect the worldviews of others, but beware of our own. Why is it ours? And why, with so many options, we think it's true? I invite each of us to take time to reflect on what our worldviews are and where they came from. Second, we should develop the capacity to think in terms of worldviews. That is, with a consciousness not only of our own way of thought and that of other people, so that we can first understand and then genuinely communicate with others. Third, as individuals, I invite each of us to be constantly curious, to live a life of inquiry so that we seek understanding of the world around us and the cultures in it. Finally, when we come together in groups, let's engage in practices that invite dialogue, that create places for people to speak from their hearts and spirits as well as their minds, and that recognizes that each of us has something to give to the well-being of each of us. There are many dialogic practices we can use: World Cafe, open space technology, appreciative inquiry, consensus decision-making, Proaction Cafe, and others. And we can sit together differently. We can sit in circle instead of rows with people in the front and people in the back. This ancient practice of sitting in circle is as relevant for today as it has ever been in how we come together. And it could be our normal way of being in dialogue with each other. Last spring, I sat in a circle of dialogue that included people from many different countries. At the end of our conversation, a woman from the Sudan came up and said, "This is how we always talked in Sudan, and I've been longing for this ever since I came to America. But back in Sudan, we put the children in the center of the circle so they could see us talk with each other with respect and begin their own learning about how to have meaningful conversations. Imagine if we invited our children to be in dialogic spaces with us, to see us talk with each other with respect and curiosity, to sit in that energetic field of safety and non-judgment and inquiry as we explored other people's perspectives about the world. Just imagine." So back to that old Jim Reeves song, "Welcome to My World." Even though it's an old song, its chorus, with apologies for a small change, seems prescient for today. Knock and the door will open. Seek and you will find. Ask and you will be given the key to this worldview of mine. Thank you.